You know, there is one emotional intelligence skill that is absolutely vital, literally no matter what role you play in life, and that's influence. So in today's explainer, we're going to explore how you can genuinely get people on board with your ideas. We'll be focusing heavily on two incredibly effective strategies here, appealing directly to others' self-interest and uniting people under a shared common mission.
Have you ever just completely hit a brick wall when trying to persuade someone? You know the feeling. You present all the logical facts, you lay out the entire plan, and still, nothing. Crickets. It doesn't take long to realize that you can't just order people to put forth their best efforts. Real progress, the kind that actually moves the needle, requires a totally different approach. You really have to dig deep into human motivation.
Now, what's fascinating is how experts like Daniel Goleman and Richard Boyatzis look at this. They don't frame influence as manipulation or coercion, not at all. Instead, they define it as this critical social skill rooted deeply in self-awareness and empathy. Basically, it's your ability to build buy-in and persuade others without just defaulting to blind command. If you want to move people, you have to understand what drives them. But before we can get to them, we actually have to start with you.
So let's jump right into part one, the foundation of influence.
Okay, before you can influence anyone else out there, you first have to understand and lead yourself. And that whole process begins with a personal mission statement. It's this foundational tool that clarifies your core values and sets your internal compass. The formula is actually pretty simple. You start with an active verb, identify exactly who you want to help, state the method of how you're going to do it, and end with the impact, your ultimate why. So, for example, to inspire others to grow through challenges by sharing stories of resilience so that more people believe in their own potential. See how that works? It forces you to take these vague, fluffy aspirations and turn them into a concrete declaration of your purpose. And by actually putting this down on paper, you're creating a physical blueprint of your purpose. In a world that is just full of distractions, clarity like that is a massive competitive advantage. When you clearly visualize your goals, psychologists note that you activate what they call the ideal self. This is what anchors your intrinsic motivation. It's that internal fire that fuels sustained effort and long-term success. Because honestly, you can't inspire others if you aren't inspired yourself, right? And that inspiration comes from knowing exactly what you stand for.
Now, I know what you're thinking. A mission statement sounds like a boring corporate manual, but it doesn't have to be. Take a look at this incredible metaphor from Dolph van den Brink, the chairman and CEO of Heineken. His personal purpose statement is to be the wuxia master that saves the kingdom. I mean, how cool is that? He literally drew this from his love of Chinese kung fu movies. It's highly visual, it's metaphorical, and it's deeply personal to him. It perfectly aligns his values with his strengths and impact. When your mission statement forms a vivid mental image of who you are at your absolute best, it becomes incredibly powerful.
All right, moving on to part two, empathy and emotional attractors.
So once you have your own internal compass set, influence requires us to tap into the fundamental drivers of human behavior in other people. And this is where empathy takes center stage. To truly connect with someone, Richard Boyatzis' intentional change theory tells us we must recognize two very specific emotional attractors. First up is the positive emotional attractor, or the PEA. This is the stuff that pulls us toward our heartfelt dreams, our possibilities, and that ideal self we just talked about. It triggers optimism. On the flip side, we have the negative emotional attractor, or the NEA. This is what forces us to address stressful present realities, our fears, current shortfalls, and everyday obligations. It's the real self.
Now, you might think, oh, I should only focus on the positive, right? Well, actually, no. The secret to intentional change is what experts call recurrent activation. You have to leverage both of them. You activate their positive emotional attractor to galvanize change that is authentic and passionate, really connecting with their hopes. But you also have to activate the negative emotional attractor to pragmatically acknowledge their fears and everyday obligations. When you can balance their grandest hopes with respectful, pragmatic problem solving, you create this incredibly robust environment for real change to happen.
Which brings us to part three, the mechanics of influence.
Okay, so now that we understand the psychological levers of the ideal self and these emotional attractors, how do we actually put this into practice? Like, how do we literally persuade someone in a meeting tomorrow? This quote from organizational systems expert Peter Senge perfectly captures the core mechanic of empathy in action. He says we must let go of the moral high ground of thinking, I've just got to get people to do this. Instead, true influence is about finding where your interests and the other person's interests naturally intersect. You literally have to paint a picture showing how achieving your goals directly helps them achieve theirs. And Richard Boyatzis gives us a highly actionable three-step blueprint for exactly this. Step 1, appeal to the self-interest of your audience. Figure out what's in it for them. Step 2, anticipate their opposition.
Think about the questions of the pushback they're going to have and address it before they even open their mouths. And step 3, talk about the bigger mission of the group. This blueprint gives you a real-world toolkit for crafting a persuasive message that feels entirely collaborative rather than combative. You're showing them that moving forward helps them out, safely handles their concerns, and ultimately serves the greater good.
Okay, last section, part 4, elevating to inspirational leadership. You see, we can actually elevate from standard persuasion into something much, much more profound. Standard influence, which is basically just getting someone to agree with your personal point of view, works totally fine for day-to-day tasks. But we have to be careful here. Boyatz has highlighted some fascinating studies, one looking at Catholic parish priests and another at MBA graduates. And they found that if you push standard influence way too far, or if you use it without any humility, it completely backfires. If people feel like you're just manipulating them for your own personal gain, it creates intense resistance. They become way less satisfied and a lot less cooperative. So influence has to be applied appropriately.
And that is exactly why true leadership elevates influence into what we call inspirational leadership. This happens when you influence others to rally around an idea not just because you want them to, but because it fits with a shared, noble vision or purpose. You're connecting the individual's self-interest directly to a common mission. You're talking about the big why we are all here. When you do this, you turn mere compliance into genuine, heartfelt inspiration. You aren't just a boss barking orders anymore. You're a catalyst for collective success.
So, I'll leave you with this. Influence isn't some cheap parlor trick. It's not a sneaky way to manipulate people into doing your chores. It is the beautiful intersection of your authentic purpose and the shared potential of your entire team. If you can understand yourself clearly, empathize with the emotional drivers of others, appeal to their self-interest, and unite everyone under a common mission, well, to borrow from our Heineken CEO, what kingdom will you save together?